In this lesson, we're going to be covering the lookup transform. There's two different videos for this lesson. The first video covers using the lookup transform without the cache connection manager, and then the second video covers using the lookup transform with the cache connection manager. So, what is a lookup transform? Basically, if you think about it in T-SQL language, it's a join. So you're joining whatever you have in your data flow pipeline to you're including some extra rows from another table. The lookup transform is a synchronous transform, which means that as data is going through your data flow pipeline, it's not going to block it, and rows will continue to go through. Although, depending on which cache mode you pick, your package could still have performance issues. It really depends on the size of the table that you're joining to. With full cache mode, one of the tables you are joining to is going to load entirely in memory. So each time that it joins to a row in the new table, it's going to have it full in memory. This, depending on how big your table is, full cache mode might not be the best option. Another option is the no cache mode. Be very careful with this one because it can have a very high performance cost. And basically, each time rows are incoming into the pipeline, it's compared one at a time to a specific relational table. So it's not going to save any of the lookups that it does. The other one that we have there in the middle is the partial cache mode. This kind of gives you a middle ground, which as soon as the cache grows too big, the least used cache data is thrown away. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a middle ground there. And again, determining which cache mode you use is completely dependent on the size of the table and what you're trying to do. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Like the past few lessons we've done, we're going to build off the previous lesson. So I'll go ahead and open up Lesson 19. And in your Solution Explorer, let's copy that lesson. Right-click on the lesson and say you want to copy that package. And then right-click on the SSIS Packages folder and paste it. And once you have that, we're going to rename this Lesson20a. The reason we have 20A and 20B in this one is because we have two different ways of doing the lookup transform. We want to make sure we show you how to do both ways. Again, as usual, after we change the package name, go ahead and confirm that's what you want to do. Yes. And then once that's confirmed and changed the package name, you can tell up here that it's changed. Go ahead and go into your data flow. And let's bring over a lookup transform. In your toolbox, and then go ahead and just drag over that lookup. In this lesson, the requirement was to add to the data flow pipeline you have by using the production.product table, and we're going to get the name of each product. Right now, in our data flow pipeline, we have the product ID, but we don't have the product name. So we're going to use this lookup transform to determine what the name is. So go ahead and delete the constraint between the sort and your destination. And then give yourself a little room to bring that in over here. Alright. And then you'll connect your green arrow to the lookup transform. And let's rename this lookup. Again, most usually you'll give some kind of acronym. In this case, we're going to name it LKP for lookup. And then we're going to call it product name. Alright, once you have that, go ahead and connect it to the flat file connection manager. And then let's go into our lookup transform. We're going to say we're doing the lookup matches. We only want the matches to go to the destination. Go ahead and open up our lookup. And a couple things you'll notice here. We talked earlier about using the cache connection manager. You can do that option here, which we'll do in the second video of this lesson. You also have even regardless of whether you use the cache connection manager or not, you still need to set a cache mode. I would typically say use the full cache mode as the best practice. Again, as we talked about in the slides, this really can be adjusted depending on how large of a table you're using. You can also say how do you want it to when there's rows that don't match, how do you want it to handle that problem? Do you want it to fail the component altogether, ignore the failure, or redirect the error rows to some other output? We'll leave that at the failed component for now. And let's go to our connection tab at the top. It already found the connection we're looking for, AdventureWorks 2008. But we're going to, instead of just selecting a table from the drop-down box of all the tables in that database, we're going to do a query. So this is the drop-down box, a list of all the tables that we have, but we're not going to do it that route this time. Go ahead and check the use results from a SQL query, and you'll have this query in your book. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that over. All right, so once you have that, you can preview the data, which just is a simple list, the product ID and the name. The reason we include it, remember this, the whole point of this is so we can include the product name in our pipeline. The reason we include the product ID is if you think back to how T-SQL would work was you'd need something to join them by, right? Some kind of key or ID or something that's similar in both tables that you can join them by to bring back results from the join table. So we have that with the product ID here. Our transaction history table has a product ID, and it does not have a name, so we're trying to return that name. So once you have this, go ahead and go into columns, and you'll see what we're trying to do here is we want to match up our product ID. So this is our join. If you think about the join, as if this was T-SQL, and then we want to return name. So we don't need to return product ID because we already have that in our input columns, but we do want to return name back. And it's as simple as that. This is can be one of the more complex components when you get into the details of the cache modes that you can do. But again, we talked briefly about how the cache modes work. Full cache mode is going to cache all of the rows from the production.product table, and this way, each time one of the rows comes through the transaction, anytime one of the product IDs comes through the transaction history table, it'll already have that in cache and it'll run very fast. And you can do the partial cache mode whenever you have a rather large table and you want to have the benefit of full cache mode, but also the no cache is part of that. But then that's pretty much it for this. So let's go ahead and click OK. And once you're back into the data flow here, let's go ahead and go into our flat file. We have this new column now, so remember we need to make adjustments because of that. And in this lesson, what we've told you to do is go ahead and create a second flat file connection manager. So let's do that in here. Just hit New. We have one already, but we're going to create a new flat file connection manager, and we'll just call this one Extract 2. So I hit New, and then it asked me what kind of flat file is it. I said delimited, and clicked OK. Alright, so let's find a location for where this one can go. Again, remember, we're going to call this one Extract 2. This is just the name of the connection manager, not the name of the file it's going to create. So go ahead and browse to a location. And I believe we said we want this in C, Projects, and SSIS. And we'll just load it right here. Let's call it, this one is a lookup chapter, so we'll call it lookup.txt. Looks good. And as usual, we want the first column name to be in our data, so just go ahead and check that. Everything else should be good. We've set up flat file connection managers before, so we don't need to get into any greater detail here. If you need a refresher on how flat file connections work, go back to the lesson 14. So we're good on this one. Let's click OK. And let's check out our mappings now to our new location. As you see, when we changed our connection manager, we lost a lot of our connections, so we need to correct that by simply remapping all these. And once we have that, we can go ahead and click OK because we are good to go. So let's execute this package by going into our Solution Explorer, right-clicking on Lesson 20A, and execute package. And once we have this complete, we'll check out the results so we can see what our flat file will look like. Remember, all we did was we added a column called product name, and we had to, because of our source table is full of transaction history, it did not already have the name in it, so we did a lookup to the production.product table, so that we can return the name back into our flat file. So while that's loading, I'm going to go ahead and find our flat file that we just created. And we said that was under projects. And we called it lookup. So there you go. Now we have included the name column on the end, and it has each name of each product that we have on this transaction history, and we got that from using the lookup transform. So let's review what we learned in this lesson on the last slide here. So let's review again what we learned in this lesson. We learned about how to set up a lookup transform to join data, and we discovered that the lookup transform is very similar to how a join would be used in T-SQL. The lookup transform is a synchronous transform, so it's not going to it's not going to completely block data that's going through our pipeline. There's several different cache mode options that we could use. Again, this is completely different or completely dependent on the table size that we use. So the best practice would probably be to use the full cache, but depending on the size of the table, you might opt for the partial cache. We have a little warning in the book that you might notice to avoid using no cache, because it can have to be very detrimental to your performance of your package.